An observation. If you reach the end of this video and you do not visit constitutionalcounty.org, then you are either on life support or you simply don't give a damn. It's August 14th, 2026. Welcome to YesToHellWith.com. Let's look at the obvious answer. There is a principle I try to live by, Occam's razor. Stripped to its essence, when we're confronted with competing explanations for a problem, don't unnecessarily complicate the answer. Look for the simplest explanation that can adequately account for what we actually observe. And I think we desperately need this discipline today. People everywhere know something is wrong. Government grows larger. Bureaucracies deepen, rules multiply, technology expands government's ability to monitor and control, and ordinary people increasingly feel that their property, privacy, livelihood, family, and freedom are subject to institutions they can barely influence. So we search for answers. Maybe we need the right president, the right Congress. Maybe the answer is buried in some obscure statute or definition. Maybe it's the UCC, banking, offset and discharge, some forgotten jurisdictional theory, some guru who claims to have figured everything out. And what happens? We fracture. We argue with one another. We disappear into theories. We spend years in the weeds, and government keeps expanding. So let's apply Occam's razor. Strip away everything that is unnecessary. Reduce the problem to its essence. And ask one simple question. Will government answer to the people? Suppose I write the Internal Revenue Service and ask, what specific authority establishes the obligation you claim applies to me? Now, I don't want boilerplate responses. I don't want a pamphlet that ignores the query. I want an answer to the question. Suppose I write my senator or congressman. What is the constitutional authority for this particular exercise of federal power? Answer the question. Suppose a local official tells me what I may or may not do with my own property. I ask, what authority permits you to interfere? Answer the question. Because what is representative government if government refuses to answer the people it supposedly represents? My point is that perhaps we've made our understanding of why government has run amok much more complicated than it needs to be. Now consider this point. A government that will not answer to the people is a government that cannot meaningfully be held accountable by the people. That's the issue, accountability. I learned something about government power the hardest way imaginable. I spent 4 years in a federal prison for failing to file federal income tax returns. I spent months in isolation alongside murderers serving 2 and 3 life terms. I experienced diesel therapy. I lost property, years of my life. I suffered consequences within my family that remain with me to this very day. Whatever conclusion you reach about my case, understand why I speak the way I do today, with a sense of urgency at that. Because when government power comes through your front door, the theories disappear. The courtroom is real. The handcuffs are real, and so is the cell and the loss. And if overwhelming government power can descend upon one person, it can descend upon another. So what is the answer? I don't think we need another theory. We need a common cause. And perhaps that common cause is extraordinarily simple. Government must be accountable to the people. If government claims authority, prove it. If government claims jurisdiction, establish it. If government claims an obligation, then identify it and support it. And before government takes property, restricts liberty, closes a business, or interferes with a family, cite the lawful basis for doing so. That doesn't require Republican or Democrat agreement. It doesn't require accepting my theory of anything. It requires accountability. And where can we realistically restore that? I don't believe we begin in Washington. We begin where we still look one another in the eye, locally. Our county sheriffs, commissioners, local officials, neighbors. Imagine a county built around one fundamental expectation. Before government uses coercive power against a person, government must establish its authority. And now, imagine something. Imagine you've written to the IRS and you asked, "What law do you claim applies to me? What is your authority? What establishes your jurisdiction?" Instead of direct answers, you receive boilerplate responses. You receive the same type of response from your elected representatives. No one answers your questions. Now imagine taking those letters and responses and giving them to your county sheriff. And the sheriff keeps them as a record, a repository documenting the questions raised by the people in his county and the answers or failures to answer received from government. Now imagine that sometime later a federal SWAT team arrives at that citizen's home. Vehicles, weapons, agents preparing to enter. And standing there is the county sheriff. He knows the history. He has the record. He says, "Before this goes any further, I have documentation showing that this man repeatedly asked your agency to identify the legal authority underlying the action against him. He has asked his elected representatives. Those questions remain unanswered. If you possess lawful authority, establish that. If you possess a lawful warrant, present it. Establish that it applies here. Then we proceed according to law, constitutional organic law. But unnecessary force will not substitute for an answer today." Now just imagine that. Not a sheriff declaring himself above federal law, not a sheriff obstructing a lawful warrant, a sheriff understanding both the authority and the limits of his own office and using every lawful means available to protect the people of his county. The citizen created the record, the sheriff preserved the record, and before force became the answer, authority became the question. Now imagine one county operating this way and then another and another. Citizens creating records, sheriffs knowing those records exist, having possession of them, and government understanding that before overwhelming force is brought against a family, somebody is going to ask by what authority, and someone is going to answer. That is not rebellion, that's accountability. And maybe we've spent decades searching through theories, definitions, gurus, elections, and promises from Washington for an answer that was sitting directly in front of us. Government must answer to the people. And perhaps the most practical place to restore that relationship isn't Washington, it's home, our communities, our sheriffs, our counties. That's the idea behind constitutionalcounty.org. Create the record, know the law, ask the questions, elect constitutional officers willing to demand the answers, county by county. Because after stripping away all the theories and all the noise, Occam's razor brings us back to the obvious answer. A government accountable to the people must answer to the people. This happens locally. And as always, may truth reign supreme.